fundraising success. My name is Stephen Shattuck, and I'm the VP of Marketing over here at Bloomerang, and I'll be moderating today's discussion. And today I'm joined by two leaders in the nonprofit technology arena. My new friend, Steve Roseman. Good morning, Steve.
Good morning.
How are you? Thanks for joining us.
Doing well, yourself? Oh, thank you.
Good. Steve, for those of you who don't know, he's the founder and CEO of We Do Auctions here in Indianapolis. And joining him is my colleague, Jay Love. He's the founder and CEO over here at Bloomerang. Hey there, Jay.
Hi, Steve. Long time no see this morning.
Yeah. Good to have you with us, as always. Some of you may recognize Jay. He's the original co-founder of eTapestry, and he's also currently a senior vice president at Avectra, in addition to his duties here at Bloomerang. So great for both of you to be here. Really great discussion we've got planned. So what we're going to do today is Steve's going to kick us off. He's got a really great presentation about best practices for live event fundraising. And when he's done, he's going to toss it over to Jay. And Jay's going to talk about how to sort of keep those donors donating to your organization once you've sort of gotten them at that first initial event. And then what we'll do at the end of all of our webinars is we'll save some time for a Q&A session. So as you're listening for the next half hour or so, please feel free to send over any questions or comments in the chat room. I'll see those and I'll pull out some questions during the Q&A session, and we'll try to get as many answered as possible. And please know that we will be sending out the slides and a recording of the presentation later this afternoon. So if you missed anything or if there's something you wanted to maybe refresh on, that will be available. So at this time, I'm going to hand it off to Steve, and he's going to get it started. So Steve, tell us about live event fundraising.
All right. Well, thank you, Stephen. I also want to say thank you to Jay and the Bloomerang organization for bringing me on and allowing me to share some information on a lot of live events and a lot of the trends that we've seen over the last 6 months. So let's just jump on in here and talk about some live event successes that some of the organizations out there have had and some of the downfalls that we're really seeing out there. The big thing is how do you produce a great event every time? And really the main area that we need to look at is catering to our patrons. A lot of organizations might focus on what they like, but we really want to look at the patrons and what type of an event that we're hosting to focus on their needs and what they're attracted to. There's 3 main live events that we typically see out there. Obviously you got your black tie gala, which actually some of the trends now are more your gala event that is more casual. Award style events, social cocktail style, and some awards and community events. So I just wanted to touch base on some traits in some of those areas that we've really seen some success there. And the first thing is actually prior to the actual event, and it's focusing on what you're really trying to achieve for that specific event, because there are so many events that we throw throughout the year. The main thing is who we're trying to attract. Are we trying to bring in the current supporters that we already have with our organization, attract new supporters? Are they affluent individuals? Who are these individuals that we're trying to bring? And a lot of that's going to tell us if we're putting on a silent auction, what type of items to bring. If we're throwing an event that has an admission fee, how much do we charge for that admission fee to really gain that success for that event in terms of attendance? How do we market our event? This is one area that I really wanted to focus on because I've seen a lot of organizations do really, really well or really struggle in this area. So I think this is a key factor that a lot of organizations really need to look at because different events focus their marketing in different areas. The big thing that I think is lost out there is really looking at our marketing somewhat like a corporate entity in our country today. If we have a gala, social event, a themed event, I see some amazing organizations out there that they've been able to promote their cause as well as create a fun, exciting marketing platform. As Jay will probably express to you later on in his presentation, there's some statistics that show that the majority of our events out there and the majority of our current donors are actually new donors, not re-existing donors that we're bringing in, especially for these auctions and these live events. One main thing that I've seen lately, I was at an event I was part of actually developing it, is an organization was trying to bring in attendees that were not yet followers and current patrons of their organization. And week after week, they were promoting this event that was a fun event, but all they did was talk about the cause, which there's nothing wrong with talking about our cause, but if you're attracting people that don't understand your cause yet or don't know much about your organization, what they're going to focus on is it a fun event? Is it exciting? A very easy example for me is there's a lot of mini marathons or 5Ks out there that are huge fundraisers. You would find out if you knew me, I am not a big runner. But some of these mud runs and these night runs that just make it fun and exciting, I've gone to just because it was fun and exciting, not because of the cause. But once I got there, I really got to know the organization, and that's where my interest lies. So when it comes to a lot of the marketing of some of these events, we really got to focus on what we're looking at. The awards. This one's actually pretty easy. If we're marketing for an award event, we want to actually focus on the person receiving the awards and the individuals who are being honored, because as we all know, everybody loves recognition. That being said, if we put more attention on them and their award, they're going to be more apt to invite people to that event because they want to be seen by their peers in that light. Awareness and community events. This one's very simple. Keep it family-oriented, fun, exciting, the cause. Typically that one is more for awareness, so and bringing everybody together. So that's really going to be a lot of the focus. Here's some examples that I wanted to give you. This is actually an example from the organization I started 3 years ago in honor of my grandfather. We were in a situation, we help individuals with MS. We had 0 followers except for my family. And so what we had to do is figure out how do we attract people to our event if they don't know anything about our organization. So we created a flyer that is a little bit more festive and shows more the gala feel more than the actual cause. So at the beginning, we focus on the cause, then we transition to exciting and the cause. In the 3 years that we put on this event, we've doubled in support every single year. So we went from 20 to 40 to 60. And what I mean by that is those are the percentages that were actually there because they understood our cause and they were there to support the organization, not just a fun party, even though we do have a lot of fun at that event. Another example here is the awards. This image right here is actually a local newspaper that they published this for this gentleman to, once again, just to recognize him. This right here will show they actually put the pictures and recognize those individuals in the flyer that they shot out to the community. It's a fantastic way, once again, to recognize those individuals, which will instantly increase your attendance because they want to come and see that person get that award. So those are some marketing tips in those few areas, because it's the event success is not just based on that night. It's the build-up of how you get those individuals there. But I do want to also talk about auction items. There's a lot of live events that put on auctions. And that's something that I really got into over the last couple of years, and it's one of our biggest fundraisers in our charity event that we host every year. The number one thing is treat our auction like a retail store. I'm sure there's a lot of organizations right now on the phone that have done exactly what I've done. We have volunteers running around the city. We're potentially doing it ourselves, and we're going out and trying to get items. And as we all know, that's not exactly the easiest thing to do. So we reach out to the community, and whatever they're willing to give us, we take, which is not a bad thing. But sometimes the value of the items don't correlate with the patrons who are attending. So we have to remember that people buy for 2 reasons when they typically go shopping. One, they actually like the item that they're looking at, or they're looking for a sale. I'm sure a lot of us on the line have patrons that they're just looking for a deal. You know they're not going to pay retail. That's all they're looking for. You have the other donor that they're there because they understand that they are supporting a cause. They can purchase something that they're interested in, and the great thing about that is it's going to a cause, not a retail store. So we got to keep that in mind when we're getting our auction items. Find out what our patrons like. This is something I think people are afraid to do. The key to this, though, is actually prep prior to your event, and that's keeping adequate reporting and tracking of events that you've done in the past. So once again, as Jay's going to talk about earlier or later, is how to actually achieve that reporting adequately. The second way is as simple as just call and ask them. One thing that has really catapulted our silent auction is we'll take our reporting and we'll look at our top donors and the people who participate the most in our auctions, and I'll simply call them. I'll call up John and just say, hey, John, I noticed last year and actually previous years, you always participate in the silent auction. You love it. It seems that's where you do your Christmas shopping. This year for our silent auction, is there anything at all that you would like to see in that silent auction that you would be interested in? It's a great way to then go after items that you know are potentially going to go for sure in the auction there. What type of auction, what makes your auction stand out? I'm almost certain that everybody on this phone is in a market where there's silent auctions taking place weekend after weekend after weekend. And as we know, people cannot achieve all those events all the same, or going and attending all those events all the time. So we have to stand out from other auctions that are going on. The big thing is not having the same auctions or same auction items every single year. Change it up, make it different so people don't always look at your auction and kind of disregard it after a while. An easy way to change that is put some items together to create a higher value. Now that doesn't always mean you put a higher price tag on it. That means you create a higher value, so it makes it more interesting to those individuals. More items do not always mean more income for your auction, for your silent auction and live auction. That's a big no-no. A lot of people think let's just flood the event with a lot of auction items. Typically, you want to keep your auction items about half of the patron attendance. The next is make sure you have price points for everybody in the room, anywhere from $25 to a couple $100. That way everybody in the room feels like they can participate and they haven't got in over their head with the silent auction. Some current items that are really popular right now: men's watches, cigar boxes, pet baskets. One big thing right now is 3-day vacations. You don't want to have long vacations. Let me restate that. I don't want to say don't, but right now your 3-day local vacations are really popular versus your 8-day vacations. So those are just some quick trends right now in the auction item area. Some other trends in functionality: your mobile and online auctions, pre-launching an auction right now, pre-authorization for payment, silent auction, actually closing the silent auction after the live auction takes place. So I just want to bop through these real quick. Some benefits here: making a more fun user experience for the patrons. They actually get to see the auction items before they attend. They instantly get notified when they get outbid. So you're going to see more activity there. They don't have to stand by bid sheets all night long. And at the end of the night, it really helps with increasing, the view as they leave, because they're not standing in long lines all night. Organizational benefits: raising money before the event even starts. Patrons don't have to attend the event to actually participate in the auction. Less volunteers, instant reporting at the end of the event, which, like I mentioned before, is going to help you for your next year, and fast and easy checkout process. Why you would pre-launch your auction is simply to, one, build more excitement not only for your silent auction but also for your event. But patrons can actually start bidding, and you can start raising money before the event even takes place. I've seen some auctions raise up to $8,000 before the door even opens. So obviously every organization would like that. Pre-authorization, this is becoming very, very big in the auction world. Allowing your patrons to swipe their card as they register not only helps the organization make sure that they collect all the funds that evening. Now they're not bill collectors for weeks on and afterwards, but it really helps the patron at the end of the night so they don't feel like they have to go stand in a checkout line before they exit the event. Increasing auction activity, there's some main key points here. With the mobile bidding, you instantly get out notified, or notified when you get outbid. The big thing, though, is don't rely on a text message to promote bidding higher or bidding on items that have not been bid on. Do that from the front of the room. Nothing is going to replace the emotion that somebody's going to give you in the front of the room. Do not rely on a mobile bidding platform of any kind to promote items that have not been bid on. Right before the event or the silent auction closes or live, just create that excitement right before it ends. Another big trend out there is leaving the silent auction open 10 minutes after the live, so it allows those patrons who thought that they were going to win a live auction item to go back in and potentially bid on some of the silent auctions. A lot of people have a budget when they come to these events, so if they haven't spent their budget yet, let's get them back into the silent auction so they can do that and we raise some more money there. Checkout process, once again, with a lot of the mobile bidding platforms out there, it's really going to make it fast and efficient. Remember, for every event, whether it's a gala, awards, whatnot, they're going to remember the last thing that happens in the evening. If they're standing in a line for 30 minutes, that's the last thing they're going to remember, or they're just not going to stand in that line. Pre-authorization really helps out with that post-checkout. Multiple lines for credit card processing, at least one for cash and check. And here's a big one. With a lot of the mobile bidding platforms, they really get people in and out when it comes to payment. Where a lot of organizations struggle is they don't allocate enough volunteers to help the patrons go get their items. So that's an area that we can really speed up our event and our checkout process. Tracking for our next event. This is really where the CRM is going to come into play. We want to know what items were bid on the most, where our money's coming from, how many people are participating, who bought what, the top donors. These are all key factors so you know who's going to attend your event, how much they're going to spend, and what type of items you really want to cater to at that auction. So some of the key points, I just want to go over real quick before I wrap up and turn everything over to Jay, is we must know what type of patrons are attending our event, because if we don't know that, we don't know how to properly set the mood for the evening, whether it's about the silent auction, live auction, wine poll, if you're doing raffles. All that is going to be based on the type of attendees that you have that evening or that afternoon. Know what your patrons are interested in, whether it is a silent auction, live auction, but even a wine poll. A wine poll is not great for every event. A raffle is not great for every event. So we got to know who is attending and what they're interested in. We have to make it fun for the patrons, whether it's an award show or an awards event or just a social event. People still want to go and be entertained. Develop a fast process for the checkout. Once again, this is catering to your patrons. Number one thing for our next year event is creating a reporting system so you have the results going into that next year. That is very, very crucial to every event that we host. Even if it's a walk, a run, we have to know who we're working with. So I just wanted to go over real quickly a lot of those key points that I've seen over the last 6 months and some of the trends that are happening out there. Feel free to contact me for more information. But I do want to turn it over to Jay, because a lot of the information he's going to go through is going to really focus on taking the information I shared and taking it to the next level.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. Yeah, that was great. Wow, there's a lot of really helpful information there. There's definitely a science to these live events.
So, Jay, don't you wish he was at a few of the events that we've been at in the past?
Yeah,
even it
definitely. I've been to some events where people were not following those things, and it would have been made a lot of difference, I'm sure.
Well, one question you got to write down. I don't know what a wine poll is, but I'd be glad to participate in one. So.
Yeah, what is that? I didn't know what that is either. You better tell us, Steve.
It's basically you create this huge wall of wine. Every bottle in there is at least a minimum value, and there's a big bottle in there for a couple $100, and everybody just pays, say $20-$25, and they choose a bottle of wine that's in a bag, so they don't know what they're getting, and hopefully they get that big bottle of wine.
Okay, so sort of like popping balloons at the county fair, right? Doesn't know what's behind it.
Exactly.
Well, great.
Good.
Well, good. Well, we're going to take some of those ideas, and what Stephen just talked about is, getting everything into CRM. Almost any CRM system that you have has the ability to import in that information, and so many of whether you're using a particular event system or a particular auction system, has the ability to export something into a spreadsheet file and then bring that in. And one of the key things you want to make sure of is that either the systems are totally integrated together, and that's not often the case. I think 10 years from now, we'll look back and we'll say, wow, some people really didn't have those, so they tied together. But if they're not, the ability to get the proper information into a spreadsheet and then to import that in is so critical. But let's talk about a couple of the other items. When we talk about the retention success after any event, I'm going to give you 2 or 3 steps here that I think can make a huge difference in that. And it requires a top-notch database which everyone can use, because no matter what your system is, I don't care if you've got every bell and whistle in the world and everything that you would ever dream of, if your fundraisers don't use that, you cannot increase your retention, because retention is based upon relationships. And the relationships are built by the people that are interacting with your donors and with your prospects. And if those interactions are not kept in the database, that's not going to be the situation. So that's what when I talk about there is a database that everyone can use, so that everybody from your fundraisers to maybe planned giving officers to even the executive director, if it's not easy enough that the executive director can use, it probably is never going to be able to record that information. So as I said, even fundraisers and executives must be able to use that. So how? Well, in order to make it easy, the CRM or database is so intuitive that no training is needed, period. And I'm very sincere about that. I've been involved with providing technology and databases for 30 years, ever since 1983 in this marketplace. And I look, what's sitting right here on my desk, and Stephen knows, he's sitting here beside me, I'm holding my smartphone. And the technology that's in this smartphone is literally 20 times what I sold in database technology for years and years and years. And yet, every user of a smartphone, there's only maybe 1 out of 1,000 that ever attends a training class. Why? Those smartphones are designed for you to pick up and start using and figure out what you want, add to them what you need, and make it happen. I fervently believe that the databases should be the same way, that anybody could just sit down and it's designed to do that. So let's talk a little bit about design philosophy and do that. I think it's got to be very simple and very clean, much like using Google. People always remark in the early years why the Google screen did not have any more on it. And I know they dress it up a little bit by changing what's on the word Google, but that's about it. It's got to be where people can just sit down and start using. They can use it on any device, and they avoid a multitude of features that people don't use. We were recently out at the Association of Fundraising Professionals National Conference in San Diego, and we actually conducted an informal survey there, and we found that the average organization felt like they were using less than 20% of the particular functions and features of their whatever application they were using, which is sort of amazing. When they decided to buy that, most of the time they were buying based upon a large multitude of features, not the ones that they were going to be using day after day. So I'm going to show you a couple examples from our database, Boomerang, and how clean and easy it is to use. This is the login screen, and when I said any device earlier, whether you're on your phone, a tablet, an iPad, or a laptop, or your desktop, you can just go to the website, log in by typing in the information you see here, and then when you're in the application itself, only these 6 icons appear, so you don't have to worry about tabs and rows of tabs and things of that nature. You can really just click on any icon. In this case, I clicked on the one with the people there for constituents, and it just sort of guides me to just typing a name. And if I'm an executive and I'm an infrequent user, I'm only coming into this a few times a day after I've interacted with outside constituents, I can very easily find that person and decide what I want to do with them by just typing that information in for that. Step 2, building in best fundraising practices. And this is where we're going to tie in some of the handoff of the information coming from the event area. So when we talk about building in best fundraising practices, I'm going to focus in on 2 areas: donor retention and donor engagement, and the next area is prospect and donor communications for that. And this is really critical, particularly the latter area, as you talk about follow-up with people from your event. Now, when we talk about best practices, I'm not relying on Steve and myself. We need to bring in the heavy hitters for that. And what we're doing here is queuing in the experts. And the 2 people that we rely upon quite heavily are, first of all, Dr. Adrian Sargent, sort of the father of donor loyalty and donor engagement and donor retention. He literally wrote the book or books on that, as you can see there. And then on the left is Mr. Tom Ahern, our Bloomerang Donor Communications head coach, who has written several books on donor communications, donor newsletters, e-newsletters, how to make them much, much more effective. And when we talk about what they bring to the table, it was Dr. Sargent who coined the phrase that 10% increase in your retention can increase the lifetime value of the fundraising database by upwards of 200%. And one of the key things that we don't often talk about is most of those first-year donors, and we know special events, if nothing else, are outstanding at bringing those first-year donors in, that 70% of them or more never renew. And let's think about what that means communication-wise and how that goes about that. One of the key tidbits, and having been on all 3 sides of this, I've been an event sponsor, I've been a participant for that, and I've also been the technology vendor providing that to do that. One of the things I think is often lost is if people are inviting folks to sit with them at their gala table, or if someone's a runner and they reach out and they have 50 people sponsor them or 25 people sponsor their run or their walk to do that. I'm a big believer that the next communication should come from that participant or from that table leader, that they can come back and thank you for your support and let them tell their own personal story of why they're involved with the mission of that organization. Folks, that is so, so powerful if you have that first communication come from the person they have the allegiance to or they have the connector to, and make that come about from that. So let's talk a little bit about what lifetime value means to you, because it's not just the retention, but we're talking about the total net contribution that a donor generates during his or her lifetime in your database, because special events are wonderful about bringing people in the front door, but we got to be so, so careful that we don't have just as many going out the back door. And the key to that, building that lifetime value, is to keep them with us. And the most critical time period, according to Dr. Sargent, is getting that person involved from the first time they make any sort of financial contribution to their second contribution. And if you wait until nearly a year from them to ask again, the chances of that occurring are very slim. In fact, Dr. Sargent mentions that if someone gets past 90 days without interaction, communication, and perhaps a second donation, the chances of them being a second-time donor have dropped by more than 50%. So that's a very, very key aspect of this, is that communication coming in. Now, when we talk about retention, this is a chart we put together that shows the overall donor retention in the nonprofit world based upon actual records in databases has dropped over the last 5 years from 50% to 41%. And that's sort of sad when you compare this to the commercial sector, where the average retention of customers from 1 year to the next is 94%. Over here, we're at 41% to do that. But what I always marvel at is down in the bottom right-hand corner here, this 70% that I'm pointing to right now and highlighting. There were a small number of organizations that actually had a 70% annual retention rate for their donors from 1 year to the next. and they were very, very good at making this happen. So one of the key things that we always point out in any CRM system is the ability to very quickly measure the retention. This is the dashboard from the Boomerang product as an example here, and you can see this particular organization in the last 365 days has a retention rate of 45%. And this literally changes from day to day to day as they use the product, so they can compare what their retention rate is from this week to next week or from this month to next month to see how they're doing in that regard. And this dashboard becomes your cockpit, so it's showing your retention rate, your revenue, your actual campaigns. And if we go back to that report there, one of the fun things is your event can be one of these campaigns, so you can see literally, did you hit your goal, how it's going on, particularly if you follow the advice of what Stephen said there a minute ago of opening up the auction phase prior to the event. You can actually start to see this campaign progress goal being achieved as the event moves in, and the follow-up after the event as the different monies are collected and things are all coming in from each type of event that you're holding. One of the other things that we think is very important is measuring the engagement level. And what you're seeing here for this individual is their engagement level, and it moves from cold to cool to warm to hot to on fire, and that's based upon these various factors that you see here. And attending an event, as you can see here that I'm highlighting right now, is one of those key factors of engagement for that. But I think also is stewardship over here. Anybody that's responsible for bringing in additional sponsors, allowing people that they introduce to your organizations that become donors, you want to make sure in your record-keeping system that you link back to the original connector, to the person that invited them to your event, so that you can see how many people from their table contributed or from the people that participated in their sponsorship of their physical or running activity or walking activity, how that ties in, so that the hard credit goes to the person making the donation, but the soft credit is reflected in the connector person's record there. Also, key engagement factors, volunteer activity, whether or not they're opening up and looking at their emails, whether they're clicking on links here. This really tells you after the event's over what type of engagement you're having and whether you're having this person get tighter and tighter with your organization, or are they moving a little bit further away for that. Because if we don't see that engagement meter move in the next 3 to 4 to 5 months after they participated in one of your events here, if we're seeing this stay the same or dropping, we know the chances of them participating on their own the next year are going to be very, very slim to do that. So these are just some of the factors that we bring into play there, and might raise a question or two. As Stephen said, if you have any questions, please ask them in the chat room, and Steve and I will be taking those in just a minute. Now, when we talk about donor communications best practices, I always refer to Tom Ahern. And for those of you that are not familiar with Tom's work, just type in Tom Ahern into Google, and he does a weekly newsletter that's one of the very, very best in the industry. I always recommend his newsletter. And I love his quote here: "Successful direct mail appeals are quite simple. At heart, they are love letters to donors and prospects woven through with clear cries for help." And Steve talked a little bit earlier about your communications with the individuals. It's very, very important to be talking about the donors themselves and the impact they personally are making. It's nice to know what your organization is doing, but just reciting facts about your mission and your accomplishments are not as important as saying to the donor that you made these come to life, you made the difference, and you have that come into play. And it was Tom that was talking a lot about of using the connector, the person that brought them to your event, to help with your first initial communication. I'm also a big, big believer in that first set of communications, and here's a timeline that we see here out of the Boomerang program where we can see each touch point and all. I think it's also very important in the first 3 to 4 months after the event, if this is a first-time donor and contributor to your organization, to send out some sort of a brief survey. And when I say brief, 4 or 5 questions at the most, and find out their opinion. Did they like your event? How do they want to be communicated with? Do they want it to be in a paper? Do they want it to be electronic? How often do they want to be communicated with, etc.? What aspects of your mission are they most excited about? If you can ask people's opinion and then, more importantly, put the results into the database and strictly follow what they've asked to do, your chances of making them a 2-year, 3-year, 4-year, 5-year, 10-year donor are much greater. And as you can see, anytime you can see a timeline like this and find out how many touch points we've had with somebody. Now, if you've got thousands and thousands of contributors, we know those touch points can all be face-to-face meetings. But we can certainly make some of them telephone calls. We can make a lot of them personalized communications, whether it's in writing or electronic, so that they're personalized and they talk to the interest and the needs of that individual. That makes such a huge difference as we go forward. And if you want to, one of the things that we help people move into is into a prospect management or a moves management area here, so that we can see what step of the process we're in. Are we in a cultivating step, a stewardship area? Are we ready for an actual solicitation? As people move from an event attendee into a possible annual fund donor, maybe even as something as nice as a major gift or a legacy donor to that, we want to find out the plan. And I don't have information on my slides about this, but one of the ways of helping to identify that, you may be able to do what we call a prospect research or a financial wealth overlay. And for all the people that participated in your event, try to find out which ones might have the means to do something much, much greater. And if you do the right prospect research overlay, which can be done electronically with most databases, it will even tell you how active they are in contributing to other charities. What is their philanthropy interest in areas? And you can see if this is a person or a family or a household that is active in participating in charity contributions. So all those things come to life in making the CRM be a very, very powerful tool and sidekick to you. And remember those key things, that it must be easy enough for even the CEO to use, and you want to be able to bring those best practices to life. And if you're not actually performing them, maybe have it remind you with a hint or two every once in a while that this is what you should be doing next for that. So Stephen, I think we left it with right about 20 minutes in our session here. Have we got some questions here that we would like to do?
Yeah, we've got some questions. We got a couple in the chat room, and actually I got some over Twitter, so that's kind of fun too. I know, Jay, you're pretty active on Twitter, so you'll feel right at home with these questions, I'm sure.
I hope so.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that 70% of donors don't renew, if you're spending all this money on a big event, that's pretty significant, right? So what advice do you guys have for maybe communicating to those folks who are first-time donors at an event, and making sure that they do renew so you don't lose that investment?
Well, I'll begin, then I'll let Steve add his 2 cents in there. As I was alluding to a couple times during the presentation, so oftentimes the next communication that someone gets from an organization, I've attended events or I've sponsored someone that was in a 10K walk or run or one of the breast walks or whatever the case may be, and the next communication came from the organization, and I really didn't even know I had donated to that organization. I thought I was donated to Mary or Susan or Tom for their participation. Versus, I had one that stands out literally like a huge beacon in the night, because the next communication came from the person that I sponsored or the person who invited me to sit at their table, and they thanked me personally and told me why they were involved with the organization, and they literally made a handoff to the organization and told me who would be following up from the organization with the next communication, much like handing off a baton in a relay race. And that, more than anything else, has ensured my participation with some events that I really went to just because it sounded like fun, or I had a good friend that invited me to do that. And all of a sudden, my wife and I and our household became involved with that organization for a long period of time. Steve, what would you add to that?
I think it's along the exact same lines. One thing that I've noticed, that if we do attract new or current donors after the event takes place, they're donating, let's call it a gala, from an excitement that you built or a cause that you built, especially if we're talking a fund to need. So after the event is over, the time from that event to when you reconnect with that individual is so vital. If you can gift those funds to the areas that you talked about gifting that evening within a month or two, they see where their money went and they get very excited about it. And they still have the emotion from that event. So I 100% agree with everything that Jay just mentioned, that communication shortly after the event is crucial.
Stephen, can I add one more comment?
Yeah, please.
The other thing, and it's very simple to do, figure out what the average amount donated at your event was, or the average auction amount. Anybody that came in above that average, make a personal phone call to and thank them.
100% agree.
Yeah, you know, it literally is anybody that's above that, let them know, because that is your potential major donors just sitting there waiting to be communicated with, and they've been handed to you. And so often I see them send out that same general "Dear so-and-so, thank you" letter, and they got a chance to connect. And if you don't have time to do all of them, just find anybody that's above the average for that night or for the event itself and make a quick personal phone call. Even if you do nothing but leave a personalized voicemail message, it is extremely powerful, because very few organizations do it, so it sets you apart so totally from everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Well, here's a donor communications question, and it comes from Andrea here in our chat room. So Andrea puts on an annual dinner, and she's got a mobile payment device so that folks can participate in the live and silent auctions. How would you suggest that she gets the word out to people who are going to come to the dinner, that that's going to be available, that there are items for sale? How would you help her promote an event where they're going to be doing a live or silent auction?
Let's let the master begin with that. Steve, what would you say there, buddy?
Well, I want to clarify. Is it a mobile payment or is it a mobile bidding platform?
She says mobile payments, to clarify.
Okay. The one thing that from my marketing background, due to going to school and then also my experience in studying human behavior, you don't want to market too far out if you're trying to get the excitement built for your event and you're talking about auction items. If you're talking about payment, usually 2 to 3 months out is you definitely want to have that launched so people can put that in their calendar. As we all know, we're very busy people and we get invited to a lot of these events. But if you are referring to actually bidding on items, a lot of companies out there might instruct you to launch a week early. And there's my theory is a little bit different. As we all know, we get emotional highs and we get emotional lows. So if we launch on Wednesday, I love launching emails on Wednesday for a Friday or Saturday event, because it's far enough out where people can start raising money. You're building excitement not only for the auction. You got to remember you're building excitement for the event itself, so you want to prep the email properly. But on Wednesday, you got their excitement. Now they registered. They're starting to bid on the items. By Thursday, people are out bidding them. So Thursday night, they're excited. Well, now we're going into Friday, so now they're monitoring their items to see if they got outbid again. So now they're excited about the event Friday and Saturday. So you kept them on a high from Wednesday to the event. If you stretch it out any further than that, say a Monday, you got them on their high Monday, Tuesday, potentially Wednesday, but now they're coming down off their excitement on Thursday and Friday. Problem with that is now you have to build them all the way back up. So my advice personally would be to, if you, like I said, if you're referring to an auction and promoting that event for people who you know are attending already, it's that Wednesday is that perfect, in my opinion, that moneymaker excitement time. If you're talking about tickets and payment online, I'd say no later than 2 to 3 months out, because people have to schedule for a lot of these events. So you want to make sure you can get as many patrons as possible.
One thing I might add from the technology nerd standpoint here, that I'll wear that cap, is if you're able to, like most good systems, be able to track who opened your email and who did not, that will also give you a chance to know whether or not you need to send a follow-up email, and you can send the follow-up email to only those who have not opened the previous one or not clicked through on anything, thereby avoiding the irritation of sending something to somebody who's already read it, already responded. And if you did want to do a reminder or two, you could be limiting it to the ones that have not already opened it before. And I think people really, really enjoy if you can take that extra step and that extra bit of care.
Yeah, that's great. And since we're talking about communications, Jay, what other channels would you promote an event through? We have another question. You know, they're doing some great things through social media and their website, but you brought up an in-person phone call. Would it be appropriate to maybe do an in-person phone call invitation to an event, or maybe a direct mail piece? What other kind of things?
Well, I think that's where you got to reach out via your connectors. If someone is bringing a table full of people, that I would see if that communication can come from that person as a quick reminder to do that. Or more than likely, everybody sitting at that table probably is linked together with that person on Facebook or on LinkedIn or something, and they can send a message out via that to those people without showing it to everybody else to do that. Now, if you want to go ahead and put it in your general posting on your timeline, you might have people that are not coming to the event that all of a sudden sign up and do something in the silent auction if it's online. So that's another sort of easy way to do it with social media. And I think we're just cracking the edge of what the social media is going to mean and how it's going to make a difference in these special events going forward, because the people that are very conversant in social media, they're just now starting to attend some of these events, particularly if you're bringing the younger generation in. I always use the story. When people used to ask me to go to a new restaurant, I was excited to do that. If I mentioned to my kids or their friends that we're going to go to a new restaurant, the very next second they pull up their phones, they take a look and they see what everybody says about that restaurant. They're going out to Yelp and all these other places and seeing what anybody's ever said about that. And 2 or 3 times they said, "Dad, maybe we should go here instead of there," or something of that nature. So it's a whole new generation that's going to make this quite a big difference in all these special events a few decades from now.
Yeah, and if I can just add one more thing to what Jay's saying, I 100% agree, because people are going to follow that if they can't attend. And just recently on our mobile platform, we did launch where people can tweet and Facebook right there. They hit one button and it shoots out the item. So it really builds that excitement. So I agree. Social media is really going to change the game for a lot of charity organizations.
So Andrea, find those influencers and let them promote it for you. Take a little work off your shoulders there. Well, here's a fun question. Jay, you've gone to, I'm sure, 100,000 fundraising events in your career. Steve, you've been helping nonprofits put on events. You both have been to a ton of events.
I don't go every weekend like Steve does, but I remember. Steve, how many tuxes do you own, Steve?
Actually, only 2.
Okay, good. Only 2.
That's good. So, Jay, as an attendee, and Steve, as someone who helps organize, what's the most common mistake that you've seen at an event, or maybe something that sort of annoyed you that you don't think they should have done?
Well, let me begin first here, because I got a pet peeve, and this is the one that I'm an avid golfer, so I participate in a lot of golf events, and it seems like the people running the event think that, and if you're there and you've been away all afternoon and you're starting to get into your evening and your family time, and they want to take 2 hours to give out door prizes and to do this and to do that, and everybody's looking at their watch saying, "I've got family at home, I've got children at home, I've got things to be doing," is make sure that the activities at the end of the event are brief, succinct, to the point, and make it happen. In a golf event, my favorite one, if you're going to have door prizes, have the door prizes up on a pad or on a board, and everybody can go see what they want and do it. And you don't have to have people holding tickets and reading numbers for an hour and a half. Nobody wants to do that except the very, very loyal board members of the organization to do that, and it's violated almost every other time. I say from the time the last golfer gets in until you're leaving and getting in your car, even with a meal, should never go past 60 minutes. And the same thing for gala events and stuff, making sure the checkout can be done in 10 minutes or 15 minutes and everybody can be on their way. Steve, go ahead. I'm sorry for jumping in there.
No, I 100% agree with you on that. One thing that I really noticed, and I don't know if it's so much a pet peeve, but it's something that is so crucial that I think is misunderstood. Now, I'm also a little biased because, obviously I provide mobile bidding technology to charities for silent auctions, but what I see a lot of these leaders and these organizations do is they'll push back activities, whether it be dinner or change the time of their silent auction or their live auction to cater to those people who are showing up late. And organizations are thinking, because our numbers aren't where they should be yet, let's just keep pushing things back. Well, statistically, people are going to stop leaving or start leaving your event between 9 and 9:30. So as also a founder of a charity organization, we have to understand that if we do not capture the income by 9 or 9:30, you're now losing money. So we have to really focus on those people who did show up on time and kept to the schedule that you promoted this whole time. And we need to not cater to those individuals, unfortunately, that weren't able to make it at the time of the event when you scheduled. So we have to remember that our money is going to be made before 9 to 9:30 because we have families, we have what have you, but statistically that's the time that you got to get it done. So stick on schedule so people can rely on that agenda that you set. So that's a big thing, a big no-no I'm seeing out there, that people are losing money because of it, and drives me off the wall.
When you say 9 or 9:30, Steve, I got to smile. Does that mean that most of the larger bidders and donors are above age 50 and they just want to get home and get out of there earlier? Well,
let's just say that, or they have young families at home. That's typically when the babysitters are ready to leave. So they're getting home to their little ones.
That's good. Well, we probably got time for one or two other questions. Jay, you remember last month we had a great webinar with Sandy Reese, and one of the questions that was asked of her was, how often do you think organizations should hold a fundraising event? And I'm curious what Steve thinks of that. What do you see in terms of frequency of events from your clients and the people you work with? Do they do kind of one big event a year and that's it, or do they sprinkle smaller events throughout the year? What do you see and what do you think works?
It's all going to be based on the size of the organization. Typically, I see one large gala style event where they're trying to attract kind of their larger donors, where your ticket cost is anywhere from $100 to $300, where that type of individual, once again, they're going to spend a lot of money there. And then they're going to also, that organization is going to throw an event probably 6 months later where it's more catered to the actual community and more for awareness and togetherness, where it might be a $20, $25 entry fee, maybe a walk, a bike, something that is a lot more relaxed. Now, there are some organizations that I see do quarterly, but unfortunately what I start to see when they get to that point, if they're not a large enough organization, is they're spreading themselves too thin, and they have 4 mediocre events when they could have had 1 to 2 really strong events. So that's typically what I'm seeing out there. Those 4 events usually will raise just as much as 1 major event.
Yeah, and I think to add to that, it's really tough on the volunteers if you go beyond 2 signature events for that, unless you just have a large group of volunteers. Yeah. And I think it's also difficult on the board members to be active participants then, so you're taking something away, because no matter what you do, if you have very many events, one of them always is the one that is a can't miss. You got to be there, so that's going to be your signature event. And keep in mind, and I know Stephen, we talked about this with some of the other ones, you can have your 1 or 2 signature events where you're looking for a lot of attendance, but I am a huge believer in a lot of smaller events throughout the year. When I say smaller events, dinner for 6 people with 1 or 2 fundraisers available at that. Any of you out there, and I don't know whether we have anybody here from the university world, but colleges and universities are absolute masters of this. They have literally every week small dinners and receptions and gatherings and stuff, and they're masters at having multiple, very small, intimate, but very, very well run little events each month. And I know not every organization has the manpower to do that, but you can certainly say, hey, with my executive director, can we arrange for the executive director to have dinner with major donors or major donor prospects once a month with a different group of them, and see if we can build a relationship there, because nothing beats that one-on-one interaction where they can ask questions and the founder or the executive director or a key upper management person can talk about the direct impact that the mission's having on their cause.
Yeah. Would you agree, Jay, though, with that, those small events, they're not promoting to the same population every time?
Oh, no,
they're calling on the different small.
Yeah, you're doing your segmentation, and this is another touch point on a more intimate basis where you're getting to know each other much, much better to do that. And believe me, I don't think a major gift or a legacy gift is going to happen without those types of smaller events being part of the equation. To do that. And you know, anybody that's watched the local university run a $1 billion capital campaign and successfully hit that knows that they know how they're doing that and how they're going about that. Yep.
Well, great. Wow, that was a lot of great information in this presentation. Thanks to both of you. We are approaching the 2 o'clock hour here in Indianapolis, and I want to wrap things up just to be respectful of people's time. Steve, since you were so nice to join us and share all of your knowledge, do you want to spend a couple minutes talking about We Do Auctions for folks who aren't familiar with you?
Oh, sure. I wasn't expecting that, but basically how we came to be formed is, as I mentioned, 3 years ago, I got I launched a charity organization in memory of my grandfather to help the MS community here in Indianapolis. We were a volunteer-based organization. I had not a clue how to raise a dime. I came from a for-profit background, so my first event, I figured, hey, I'm pretty sure I know how to throw a fun party. So I started to build my gala and wanted to focus on a silent auction because I had heard that they were very profitable. I came across an organization that at that time was text-only, but I loved it. Well, I first called it an organization that was out of my price point because I just thought it was really cool. I had seen another organization, but unfortunately I didn't think I'd even raise enough money to pay that tab. So I stumbled across another organization that was text only and didn't really know much about it, but I was happy I hired them because they were able to run my silent auction for me. Then got introduced in the industry and created a technology that I really love because it's similar to the style of what Jay had mentioned with Bloomerang, where it's so user-friendly from a back-end standpoint that it really doesn't need any training. As we all know as nonprofit individuals and being in the industry, there's a lot of turnover. So one big advantage that I see that we've created that we get a lot of feedback from is people love that they don't have to worry about if their auction share disappears, if somebody's going to be able to run the technology for their organization. They know a volunteer can step in at any point. And we really try to customize our technology. So you'll see, because we work so hard to brand our events, that we spend a lot of time and money doing that. And so for me to come in with a big, huge leaderboard and a phone platform that has my colors all over it of purple, I don't think that's proper. So if you're creating a design, you're creating a theme for your event, my leaderboards are going to express that exact same design that you're hosting at your event. So that's really what we tried to focus on, is creating a very user-friendly experience for not only the charity organization, but also for your patrons. So they can go online, they can use whatever tablet. We have a lot of patrons that have used our system many, many times, so they're showing up to these events with tablets. So we see that that's kind of a funny trend right now. But the ability, like I said, we just launched where somebody can tweet an item individually or Facebook an item individually is pretty cool. But also a PDF gets shot to their phone. So it really helps out the organization as well at the end of the night for their invoice. So, and I appreciate you letting me talk about a little bit about our organization. We've had a blast working with a lot of local charities around the country. So,
Great. And Jay, thanks for joining us as well. You're on Twitter. You're an active Twitter guy. So if anybody has any questions, I'm sure they can get to us. And we're at bloomerang.co. So anyone interested in learning more about us can check that out. We've got another webinar scheduled for July 9th with Mark Pittman. So be sure to register for that. We'll be sending out the slides of this presentation and a recording later this afternoon. So Steve, thanks for joining us again. Jay, thanks again. Hope you had fun. I sure learned a lot.
Thank you so much. And to all of you still out there, we appreciate you taking an hour out of your day and hope we provided some beneficial information.
thank you very much.
Well, thanks to everyone who listened, and have a great afternoon.